Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more of this content if this is what you like. I'm here to look back at Newcastle United's victory over Fulham yesterday, which completed a really good week in the end for Newcastle, having taken 7 points from West Ham, Everton and Fulham now as well. The performance wasn't there really, particularly for the first half and first half an hour in particular, where Fulham had a lot of chances. They carved through Newcastle a lot. We've seen a lot of those away games this season where Newcastle just haven't been at it. Their intensity hasn't been there. It's easy to carve through, and they've ultimately lost the game. That's kind of been the blueprint of away games this season for Newcastle, and it's really good to see that they came through that. And there was a really harsh looking impromptu team meeting in the first half from Eddie Howe, which kind of shows that maybe the criticism of Eddie Howe in terms of the way Newcastle are playing and the way Newcastle is setting up, it's more to do with players' confidence or players' interpretations or something, I don't know, but he wasn't certainly very happy with that intensity, and you could tell that, and he said as much in his match of the day interview that he was really digging the players out in the first half because they weren't intense enough and they needed to wake up and perform a little bit better. They did in the second half. They created more chances. Anthony Gordon was lively. Harvey Barnes and Elliot Anderson came on. Anderson coming on for Willock, another potential injury there, but the situation with Willock is a little bit unclear because Howe said he didn't seem to be in too much pain, but it was just more that the injury issue was, and his Achilles, which has been a problem for him all season, obviously, was stopping him from playing at his best. So they replaced him with Anderson, and Newcastle stepped up a little bit more from there. But for me, the star of the show once again was Bruno Guimaraes, and we're here again talking about how good he is, and he's now played 100 games for Newcastle. That was his 100th appearance. He marks it with the winning goal. But just overall, his play was phenomenal. The way he dictated from deep, the fact that he started the move for his goal, which came moments after Fabian Schär's goal was disallowed for a foul by Dan Burn in the build-up, which to me looked incredibly harsh. But I think the game is sort of settled, the pattern of the game is settled a little bit from there. So I really want to focus on Bruno Guimaraes and talk about why he makes, what sort of difference he makes for Newcastle. And I think it's more to do with, we're sort of, because of the injuries this season to other key players like Joe Linton and Sven Botman at the back, and Trippier's been out recently, sort of starting to see a bit of a hierarchy developing in the Newcastle squad where three players in particular, if they perform, or at least two of them perform out of those three, as happened yesterday, because I think Alexander Isak, having been brilliant on Tuesday, had a little bit of a disappointing game because he didn't get much of the service. But Anthony Gordon and Bruno, at least two of those three players perform, Newcastle have a chance of winning any Premier League game. And if you remember, after the Man City game in January, I came on to one of these videos and said I really think Newcastle have a great chance of finishing in the top six. As we speak now, I think they're 2 points adrift after Man United lost to Chelsea in the week. Manchester United obviously play Liverpool later on today, so by the time you're watching this, it might be a little bit different to that. But Newcastle are in a position where they can challenge the top six again, and it's come from, as it did in that game against Man City, 2 or 3 of those players playing really well. Gordon and Isak scored that day. Bruno scored yesterday. Gordon had chances on his return from suspension yesterday as well. Was really dangerous. And then you had Anderson coming on and Harvey Barnes coming on. It was a really good opportunity to see that front three of Isak, Gordon and Barnes that everyone's desperate to see in action together, and it worked really well. Gordon was phenomenal on the right. I think that could be the way that Newcastle line up going forward, all being well. But most of the point, this is about how those three players sort of carry this team now, and how those three players are sort of a level above everybody else who's available at the moment, certainly. And Bruno's probably the most important in terms of style of play for that to happen. He dictates everything from deep. He did that with his goal. The passing, the range he gets if he gets a bit of space, even if he doesn't, he's so press resistant. You can see why European teams all over the place are chasing him and being linked with him, and how it's going to be difficult for Newcastle to keep him this year. Everybody has been really interested in everything that he's had to say, and the same with Isak as well. It's quite funny how the odd quote can be taken out of context. So with Isak, it was funny because he said things can happen. Then yesterday, Bruno said, "Let's see what the future holds." Incidentally, Eddie Howe said the same thing about both players in his press conferences recently. We don't know what the future holds. We don't know what will happen. And I think in the case of Bruno, with his £100 million plus release clause, there is a sort of, as I've mentioned in a video before, there is a sort of sense that both parties want to be protected going forward with Bruno if there's interest in him, if he does leave. But I think we've seen so many times, and this is another example, that Bruno is absolutely the most important player in terms of the way Newcastle play. And without him, Newcastle have to find a completely different way of performing and getting results. And that's proved quite difficult under Eddie Howe, as we've sort of mentioned before. He's very sort of set in his ways in the way that Newcastle play, tactically, energetically, systematically. Everything is very similar, with the odd tweak when it needs to happen. But this is a message to everybody at Newcastle that it shows that, Newcastle can't afford to lose Bruno if they really want to progress. European football is going to be absolutely huge for that, but I think the victory yesterday showed that that Newcastle are still in the race for the top 6, let alone the top 7 and possibly top 8, which could be European football positions next season. In terms of everything that Bruno said, he's saying the right things. Yes, he said, let's see what the future holds, but he's also said he's incredibly happy. He loves the fans, he joins in with the chants. Actually, it's really important to sort of talk about the way that Bruno's adapted himself into the culture of Newcastle. He gets it around the city a lot. Him and his family adore the place. They are integrated a lot more than previous players I've seen have been. He really gets involved with the getting involved with the chants and stuff, and he clearly feels very at home at Newcastle. And everything he said, if you actually listen to it, he's actually asked in an interview before, where does all this speculation come from? I've never said that I want to leave. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he'll leave, and I think absolutely it's crucial that Newcastle do manage to keep him going forward next season, because he's just proven how phenomenal he is with yet another brilliant performance. I thought Harvey Barnes came on and did well again after performing well against Everton. The same with Elliot Anderson. It's a shame about Joe Willett, but Anderson is really showing himself to be more than just a young player who comes in as a squad player. He could be a real asset next season. And I know we said that at the start of this season because he was so phenomenal in pre-season. And I remember in one of my first videos sort of advocating for him to start in midfield against Aston Villa on the opening day. He didn't do that, and then he got injured for months, and he's been one of those huge casualties of this season. That's been a huge shame for him. Whatever happens, Bruno has to be at the centre of it, because without him, Newcastle don't really have an identity, and I think that is not too much of an exaggeration. I think he is one of Newcastle's greatest modern day players. All the superlatives you can come up with, everything about Newcastle. He's held them together a lot this season. The same with Isak and the same with Gordon. It just shows how much potential Newcastle have lost with all these injuries this season. It has been a frustrating season, but it could very well have a happy ending because those three players look all like they're hitting form at the perfect time. I won't be here to look ahead or look back at Newcastle United game against Spurs, because I'm in Germany and Holland next week doing some work. More on that in the coming weeks, but I will be filming some videos out there. So please do subscribe and like if you're interested in watching those. Yeah, as I say, thank you very much, and I'll see you next time, which will be a video from Germany. More on that later. Cheers.